Welcome to the Art in Public Spaces Club at OCAD University. My name is Suzanne Simoni, and it's my pleasure to introduce Charmaine Lurch.
Thank you so much for inviting me. So my art comes from my interest in the environment and ideas of space and time and place, and finally as a Black woman, because I learned early to dig where you stand. It has to come from your position in the world. So space can mean so much. It's so broad: outer space, inner space, all kinds of things. And I'm always thinking about the way space moves, time moves, and for me, taking up space and belonging in space is a big part of my work. I also adopt material fluency. I have a preference for wire and charcoal and paint, but I really try to leave myself open to new materials or other materials that will speak to the work specifically that I'm trying to do. And earlier on in my career, I wouldn't get accepted in galleries, or my work wasn't so accepted because I used a number of materials. Now it's more accepted, but people were looking for like a singular note, like a painting in a specific style. But now, especially with public art, I finally feel like this is a place for me because I have my main materials, but I tend to use a number of materials. So the first slide is about being a belonging, and it's called from a series that was shown at the ROM called Being Belonging in Grace, and it's really about how this person takes up space. You can't really see it in this slide, but if you blow it up, you'll see that I'm drawing the lines behind her because I'm thinking about how she's connected to space and how she becomes different in the different spaces that she inhabits. And then I try to make her walk into the space purposefully. And in the series of 5 drawings you'll see in charcoal, you'll see that it's about joy and about embracing kind of the life and the way of being in the different topographies, in the different geographies. And I'm talking about Canadian geographies or any other kind of space, like space in maps, just habitation on many different levels. So this is my floor sculpture. It's called Blueprint for a Mobile Invisible Carriage. And a lot of my work, is research-based. I work with a lot of scholarly work, people doing work on Black subjectivity and history. And so a scholar, Professor Caroline Smart-Frost, was doing some work on, she's an archaeologist too, and so digging in this playground in a schoolyard with a number of students and other people, and they came across evidence of something there. They uncovered some fascinating clues into the history of Toronto's Underground Railroad, and it became the first Underground Railroad site dig in Canada. And what they found was remnants of the home of Thornton and Lucy Blackburn, who were the first known Black entrepreneurs in Toronto. They started the first taxi business. Our TTC colors come from them. They used to be like a kind of beige with the red. We kept the red stripe, but now we have white. And I decided to look into their the carriage and how it was built, and I couldn't find a blueprint, but I found that Thornton Blackburn had sent away to Montreal for a blueprint, and so I just gathered information on taxis and went through the archives, and then created this taxi. It's made out of MDF board, but I work with metals a lot, so I wanted it to look metallic and aged. I found a really old wheel. I still have to get it carbon dated. And then I wanted to give a call out to our present means of transportation in Toronto, because we're talking about time. going between past and present, digging up information that told the story of a community that lived in Toronto. So here is the carriage again. I wanted to show it again in this position because the shadows play a huge role. And this was from a show at the McLaren Arts Centre in Barrie. And the curator, Andrea Fatona, was talking about the way I use shadow as shadow as a kind of absence, but also the shadow is present. So a kind of absence presence and kind of a way of lighting the future. And Emily McGibbon, who also worked on the project, she's a head curator at McLaren Arts Centre, and she actually called attention to, because we're not there at night, but when the lights are off and it's dark outside, the lights have gone down in the city. She says the carriage came alive, and people would actually pass by to see the glow underneath the carriage, which was on 24/7. It was never built to be shut off, and so the carriage then would kind of feel like it was floating. And so it gave a sense of past and present simultaneously. So that was really nice that she was able to share that with me. So this is the blueprint. I painted them on board. And so they are a blueprint, but different from a blueprint, but of an actual carriage with the different sizes. And also on the right-hand side, they're glass bottles and blue china plates and things found at the Thornton and Lucy Blackburn home. They also own many homes in the city around City Hall, and so they were well known. And most of our immigration laws are based on that couple's flight from the southern United States up to Canada. So these are my wild bees, and I have to say that my work with wild bees are one of the things that bring everything in my work together, all of the elements in my practice. And because it's about art, science, material references, they locate the past and present. It's a kind of, I call it it's an architecture of my practice. So it talks about inside space and outside space of the bees. And it helps me to think of the relationship to nature, of belonging in space, how bees move through space. We see them and they're okay outside, but should they come inside our personal spaces, they're deemed, we're afraid of them. We want to get rid of them, kill them. And for me, especially in these times, it's really analogous to the way I think of being Black in society in lots of spaces that we're deemed not to be in, that we shouldn't be in those spaces, or those are not our spaces to be in. So bees help me think of a lot of those things. So the slide on the work on the left is at the Art Gallery of Guelph, and I'm always talking about all of the things in relation to bees, but bees just for themselves. So we can learn a lot from the bees, how they fly really, really high. And, that's how if you live in an apartment and you have a balcony, how those small plants are pollinated, and they live in the ground. Not all bees make honey. There's some, I like honeybees and I like honey, but really I'm working with the scientists to talk about our wild and native bees, such as bumblebees and carpenter bees and wool carder bees. They're solitary, they're female. They raise their brood on their own. There's so many interesting things and great things that they do for us, all of us, humans and animals. And one in every 3 mouthfuls of food, a bee has helped us get to that. So the show at Guelph, I wanted to show them in, people often think they're just kind of, located close to us and trying to be in our spaces, but they're all over. They live all over. So it's an opportunity to talk about the bees for themselves, and then some of those other relationships that they help me to think about. The slide on the right is a Nuit Blanche 2012, and I have the bees outside, and it was amazing to see that people, how they run through different um, installations in at Nuit Blanche, but I had music and the sound of bees. And when they came, they actually stopped right at a path that ran through the bees, and it was interesting to watch them slow right down. And then I had really young kids go through with them and tell them some interesting facts about the bees, and it was really nice to see the relationship of the kids kind of teaching most of the adults coming through. And it was from a class that I worked with of young students. So this is from a recent show in Niagara-on-the-Lake at a Riverbrink Museum. And they asked me to bring the bees to the area because they were interested in my concept of Black people and bees and how I put them together. And here, later on you'll see some more connections, but it was 4 rooms full of work of bees, of pollen grains. But really, I wanted to use the bees to talk about the migrant workers. So the bees help us to think about movement and food production. And so I had a group come in and talk with me and listen to them talking and learn. And I learned a lot about the migrant farm workers and their plight, and just relating it to food production and manual labor and the use of their hands in the production of our food, and what that meant. So it was really really lovely work, and just the start of a larger body of work that I hope to produce. So this is my work, another work that also brings a lot of parts of my thinking and my creating together. So this character I call Sycorax. Sycorax is a character in Shakespeare's play The Tempest. She's killed off before the play starts, and we learn about her from the characters in the play. Prospero, who is one of the main characters in the play, calls her the witch of the vile race. And scholars and others believe that in Shakespeare's time, they were talking about the indigenous and Black female bodies. And so I wanted to give Sycorax her voice by recreating her and having people engage and with the sculpture in a number of ways. And most people would know of Caliban, who's her son, and their indications of an island and witchcraft and wizardry. It's most of you might know it's a small work, Shakespeare's last work, but it's a huge play in what it was trying to say. And so I wanted to, talk about Sycorax. If there was a close-up, I didn't put a lot of slides, but if you go to my site, you'll see some close-ups. I put in DNA strands in her body and different colored copper wire. And for me, wire is a real means of expression. It's communication. It's, heart stents, bordering, and scholar Catherine McKittrick, who spoke about my work. I'll just backtrack a bit. The way that I engage with scholars is important in my work, in that, they've done this tons of research and have access to things that I couldn't get close to. And so, I often draw from their work, and Catherine McKittrick then, I had the privilege of her looking at my work and then responding to it, and I was able to think about my wire in such a richer, fuller way, of how we use it in the world. Specifically for me, the how wires are used to communicate was a huge one, but so many more things. And so going back to engagement with Sycorax, many people, when she is hung up, a lot of people talk to her and take pictures with her, move around her. It's really interesting to watch the kind of engagement that a work of art can call into play. And so I wanted to use these two to just kind of show that interaction. So, and there's a flattening of space in that, there's the object itself, there's the background and the person walking through it, and they're all intertwined and flattened in a certain way, even though you understand that they're separate. But I really like that another level of engagement. So I just wanted to show you just someone just engaging with the story. And once actually they know kind of the background and what I'm trying to think of, there's a lot. Also calls into play different kind of engagement. Next slide, please. And here again is another form of engagement. In a lot of the work I create, I do all of the armatures, but then I invite people to come in and work. So they might be people who just see me working. Like I have a studio, I open the door, people might see me working, and they ask what I'm doing, and I tell them, and I invite them in. So lots of different people from different walks of life have come and worked with me on the bees. They've come and right now I'm in the process of doing another pollen grain work, and I've invited people to come, and after I've wrapped the armature, I choose the colors and the wire, but there's a certain freedom that I give them in wrapping, and to tell you the truth, I find it fascinating that it's hard for them to stop. So given some structure and some freedom together, they want to create. They themselves, just people from all walks of life, and they don't want to stop. I have to beg them to stop, or they want to take the piece home and continue. So it's a lovely way that I think when I think of public art, how it can move. And while I give them the things to wrap, I also tell them the stories of what I'm trying to do, and they build on the stories, they pass on the stories, and they work with the same materials as me. So I think it's for me it's fascinating. It's a wonderful collaborative process. This was from the Riverbrink Museum again, and I had like 100 pollen grains of different colors representing flowers, but also representing the colors of the farmers in a way that when you drive by the farm, you might see them far in the fields, and you see their clothing. And they might have bright blue or a cap or something. So I wanted to, in these small grains, I wanted to tell a big story. And many people help me wrap the 100 grains because it takes like hours to wrap a single pollen grain. And so, yeah, it's a combination of ideas, of collaboration, of telling a story, and then using the materials as a means of expression to create something new. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charmaine. That was really very insightful for all of us.